Hello and welcome back to Timeline Talk on what is a pretty momentous day. It's been a pretty momentous week for Manchester United, obviously fresh off the back of a 3-2 win over Arsenal. Not every day we get to say that. I think the last time we beat them was 2018, so that's always a nice feeling. Michael Carrick left, obviously split opinions on that, but that's happened now. It's in the past. The big news for today is Ralph Rangnick started the job officially. It's his first day at United, his first press conference, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. I've got a regular panel at this point on Timeline Talk built for you, so you can look forward to that, and I'll introduce them straight after this.
Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United.
There we have it then. Stu, Henry, Friday night's becoming a bit of a regular thing for us three, isn't it? So good to have you on. A bit of consistency here and there, never went amiss. But as I mentioned, Ralph Rangnick's first press conference. We're going to be analysing a lot of what he said because there was a lot of good stuff to come out of it. It's definitely very, very promising. Before we do, be sure to like and subscribe as always. Even share the video to your friends if you enjoyed it. That'll help us massively. But we'll get straight into it. First press conference. We'll get into the title of the video. Actually, we'll break that down because he offered more sort of tactical insight in his press conference than I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did in any of his, which you'd expect from a man of Rangnick's stature and his nature as well. I'll bring up the first tweet actually, just to get us going. So Rangnick was asked about the last couple of games. I'll come to you first, Stu. And he said, I saw the games against Liverpool and Manchester City and Chelsea. Even though we won a point there, even against teams like Watford, the team did not have any control. They didn't have any control over the game, and this is something I will try to achieve. This has to do with what we do when we do have the ball ourselves and what we are going to do when the other team has the ball. In those two areas, I think it is important to develop the team in the next couple of weeks. Now, it's interesting he said in the next couple of weeks, too, because we know this is not going to be a quick fix. But I think who better to ask than you, the footballing expert, someone who has actually played football, which, very rare. Not many of us get to do that. So you're a bit of a specialist on the subject. How does he do this? It's all well and good saying, I want to gain control. But in and out of possession, obviously, he's going to be stuck with the squad he's got at least until January. How does he do that with these players?
Well, first and foremost, he's going to probably have to do it in the analytics room rather than actually on the training pitch, because I don't think he's going to have enough time. I mean, I think he had his first session at 3:00 this afternoon, and he won't have enough time to physically instill his ideas. So he's going to have to do it in the video room, the analytics room, and I think it's a lot of the players, unfortunately, will be going back to the classroom and in terms of where we would like them positioned at any given time during the match. I think one of the things that he spoke about, in fact, one of the things that impressed me was for the first time in a long, long time at the helm of Manchester United, you've got somebody who speaks with eloquency and intelligence. Probably speaks better English than most English managers in the Premier League. And it also reminded me of, you could have shut your eyes and it could have been a Tuchel press conference. It could have been a Klopp press conference, a Nagelsmann press conference in many ways. You can see what he's instilled in them, in their personality, but what came out through his personality today. And I think many people were probably captivated by what he was saying and actually listening intently for once about what a manager was trying to put across without sounding patronising to journalists and fans alike. So I was mightily impressed with him. But in answer to your question, James, he's going to have to do it in the video room purely through analytics, because he won't have enough time to instill everything he wants to. Now, I spoke on Thursday, if you remember, about when I was 8 years old, back in the 18th century. And I spoke about, one of my first early coaches splitting the pitch up into segments and squares. And I think that's how from what I could see, that's how I think he views the game. He views the pitch as a whole, and he'll split it up into segments. And I think in 3 to 4 matches time, it's going to be way too early for Sunday. I think it's Palace, isn't it? We've got Sunday. It's going to be way too early for Palace. I think you will see a certain discipline coming in. You'll see the likes of Fred, I think, flourish. I think you'll probably see the emergence of Donny van der Beek a lot more, and I think you'll probably see the removal of McTominay as time goes by. And you need those players around Fred, because Fred's not a thinking player, but Donny van der Beek is a thinking player. Bruno's a thinking player. And one other thing that I thought was quite interesting, and I know you want to dissect his press conference on, was his opinion on Ronaldo. And it kind of made me feel that he'd be able to use Ronaldo exactly how he wants to use Ronaldo, in terms of he'll be able to incorporate it perfectly, purely and simply by video analytics, and explaining to him at any one time, wherever our fullback's got the football or our deep line holding midfielder's got the football, I need you to be here. If it's the left side, I need you here. The right side, I need you here. And I think that's what Rangnick will do.
Certainly. Well, it's going to be interesting to sit and watch how it all plays out. But I'll come to you, Henry. We'll speak more literally on the topic of controlling games. Obviously, you've been getting yourself into tactics recently. You've been, I'll be the first to say, you've been making good improvements in that. So with the players that we have available, obviously it's all well and good having good players, but they have to have a certain quality to be able to control a game. So is it going to be possible with, say, the midfielders that we've got, the right back that we currently have at our disposal, are they good enough players to really control a game at this level?
I think you'll see more off the ball control than you'll see on the ball at the moment, just because pressing can be taught quite. It's quite difficult to teach it in detail, but it can be taught to an extent just through the brain. Essentially, you can give people directions as to where to run, and I don't think the midfielders are going to be. Yes, they're going to be really important when it comes to pressing. I think the two besides Ronaldo are going to be positionally the most important we're going to have in the team. And watching Rashford pressing yesterday was quite painful, actually, because he seemed to run in a diagonal line. Now, Stu will know this as well. You never, ever, as you press, you never, ever run in a straight line. You curve your runs to cut off angles. That's the idea. And that can be drilled pretty easily, if I'm honest. It will take a day for him to realise, okay, I need to press at this angle, rather than being more direct, which he was, because he kept cutting off, half an angle, and you can't do that. So I think when it comes to the midfield, we'll get one in January. I'm hoping it's Idara, because we need some stamina alongside Fred. If it's going to be Fred and Van der Beek, or if it's going to be Van der Beek and Fernandes in there, you need someone that's a worker and that's really good at winning the ball back. What I will say about Fred is he wins the ball back really high. When you play him in an 8, he wins the ball back really high, which is what Rangnick wants from his team. So he'll be integral in that side. And we saw it against Chelsea. I did a presentation on it in class as to what he really did. And, he was playing sort of an inside left role, which is what he does for Brazil. So exactly, we need... it just needs to be a bit of direction. And I think we'll see a little bit of a change against Palace, because when it comes to the tactical side of things, it's been so poor recently that any slight tweaks you'll really notice in the game. So I think it will take time. He doesn't have a lot of time. I think the only break we might have, the only gap I was looking, was from the 18th to the 27th of December. And we might have, I don't know whether we've got a cup game in that time, whether that's designated for the Carabao Cup, so we don't have one, or whether it's for the FA Cup, I don't know. But he might have 2 or 3 days to work on little things there. And again, these guys haven't had direction. The players haven't had much direction. And he speaks about control. I'd argue that off the ball control of a game is even more important than on the ball, because if you're a side like United and a side that the way that Rangnick plays, the likelihood is you're not going to have the ball for long periods of time. You're going to have the ball for, split 20-second periods where you try and, go quickly and get a shot on target as soon as you can. That's his philosophy. So I think we'll see. I think we'll see a shift. It won't be huge, but I think off the ball it's going to be way more important than on the ball. And we could see a similar thing to what Klopp tried to do with Liverpool in his first, 2 or 3 years, where transition was the most important thing for that side. And it fills me with joy to see someone talking about controlling a game rather than saying, DNA and vibes. Essentially, if you summarize some of the stuff that was said in previous press conferences with, I just want the players to go out and enjoy themselves. Yeah, that's fine. But I saw a lot more in terms of footballing knowledge, and him saying he wasn't happy with the game last night. In other terms, obviously, he didn't say directly the game was terrible, but he said that you don't want games like that, and he's right. You want games where you can control your destiny in the game, and we could have conceded a third so easily in that game last night. So we need to see control. We need to see it in the next week or so, because we've got a long period of games coming up.
Well, listen, I
was just going to say, yeah, sorry, mate. I was just going to say, Henry, spot on about the best way to control a football match is off the ball. We've spoken about this for months, actually, all of us in a variety of different shows. Most of the panelists have discussed off the ball control, off the ball positioning, the speed in which they try and close down the play. I mean, I was talking a few weeks ago, James, if you remember, about pressing isn't all about speed. It's all about where you position yourself in and around a 2-yard area of your opponent. And so Henry's right in terms of the way he speaks about control. The other thing that I noticed was that you didn't see a giggly. What does giggly mean? Giggly little schoolboy up there. There was no real smile, was there? That he was obviously he's seen it and done it, and he was there. He knew what to expect, and his professionalism up there was, it was a joy, actually. Sorry, James. I just thought I just wanted to corroborate what Henry was saying.
It's all right. I just wanted to bring a few comments up. That's all, because I think a few of them are quite relevant. Also, obviously, we want everyone watching to get involved in the comments. We want you to get involved in the debates that we're having. This is sort of the show we want you to get most involved in. So be sure to do so. I'll address this one quickly. I do not follow Liverpool Echo. You can check. That was just on the trending tab at the side. I don't want anything to do with that. But this comment really interests me, because obviously Evra commented on the fact that we might lose the United DNA, and it will be based on Ralph's style now. And I think I agree with the comment. I think the United DNA is an idea off the pitch. It shouldn't. The United DNA isn't a style of play. Do you want to play like Fergie did when we were most successful? Just get it out wide and get crosses in. It's not a sustainable way to play. Fergie had no set style of play either. It was just attacking football. There's so many different variations of attacking football that Rangnick will provide one such variation. I'll come to you, Henry, because I imagine you'll have a pretty strong opinion on this. Do you agree with, obviously, myself, the comment in that we're getting a little bit sick and tired of the wrong use of the United DNA? Off the pitch, the United DNA needs to stay, and that's how you maintain a good club. But on the pitch, it's a bit of a redundant point now, isn't it?
I think it's been misinterpreted from his press conference. When he says the United DNA, he doesn't mean a specific style of play. He doesn't mean that. There's like tram lines, right? And you keep within the tram lines. So you don't go ultra defensive and you don't go overtly attacking. You go with a balanced style of play, which, by the way, Ferguson was, a very attacking style of play. But I will mention one thing: very solid at the back. And I think people seemingly forget that. Yes, we scored a lot of goals, but it was based on a really good defense and a really hard-working midfield. So I'm tired of people saying it's the United DNA. What it is a style of play within bounds of, because formations and tactics, they change. There is no specific tactic that United have to play. Now, when Mourinho came in, everyone's going, "Oh, it's not the United DNA." Well, hold on a minute. If we're scoring goals, and the DNA of the club is to win titles, by the way, that's the most important thing, is to win and keep the fans happy. So if we're winning titles, and at times we're playing quite a good football. I think people slander Mourinho too much with his style of play, and it was effective, and it won us our most recent trophy. So I think people get caught up in this, and they need to realise that clubs change, the styles change, they shift. There's obviously a baseline of what managers come in and what they want to do, which is win and entertain the fans. But every club's the same. You don't look at the top clubs like Liverpool and Chelsea and City right now and say, okay, their DNA is exactly this. The DNA of the club right now, it can shift. It can shift. But there are some guidelines as to what you want from a team, and what you want is to entertain the fans at the stadium and to win trophies. That's the two main things that you're going to see with Rangnick. And one thing I want to pick up on quickly as well, he mentioned the DNA, and then closely after he mentioned about titles. So I think people are separating the two. The two come together. The idea behind Manchester United as a club is that we win. We win trophies. And he was saying the objective is to, improve the side and to look at winning things. That's the most important thing, because if you win things, the fans are happy. And the fans were delighted when we won the Europa League. Nobody was miserable when we won the Europa League. They were delighted because it was winning a trophy and it was doing it in an effective way, and fans are actually quite enjoying it. So I'm tired of this. And it's always ex-players that come out with, or, Gary Neville's tweeting out earlier saying, Ralph Rangnick mentioned about, if they want me to continue in a managerial role for the next year instead of consultancy, I'll recommend that if I'm doing well. And he's going, well, you wanted Solskjaer for another 20 years, didn't you, pal? So the opinion of ex-players has gone almost down the toilet now, especially United ex-players, after what happened with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So I don't think they have a leg to stand on, and they're just fans right now. These guys are not coaches. Majority of them, Gary Neville was a coach, and look how that went. So the majority of the people there, they can't really have a take when it comes to a philosophy of a manager, because the reality is Ralph Rangnick is 1,000 times the coach that they will probably ever be. So I don't think they have a right to be speaking on something that they are not experienced in.
Completely right. Well, I'll very quickly come to you, Stu. I will keep it very brief because we do need to move on to the next point. But you obviously, your footballing prime was during the Fergie era, where the United DNA was really solidified from Matt Busby. What are your thoughts on this? Because it is obviously, it's Patrice Evra who said it. He was he's obviously an admirer of Fergie. Do you think we still need to be rooted in this United DNA, or do you think it's time to maybe not abandon it entirely, but just evolve from it a little bit?
If you think back to a few shows ago, the concept, the question was brought up, I think, in the comments about DNA, and I fired straight back, explain to me what exactly is Manchester United's DNA, and I got a blank, because Henry's absolutely right. Nobody knows. Nobody hasn't got a clue, and it's like a tiny little buzz phrase that's designed to make people look intelligent, and I've got absolutely no answer for it. We all know what DNA is, and there's only one string of DNA in Manchester United, and that is winning football matches. That's it. Now, you could say that about any other club, and you could say that about anything in life, any walk of life. What is your DNA? It's about Manchester United's DNA is about winning. When you look at the types of managers that we've had, Sir Alex Ferguson was what you would class as a meat and two veg manager. He was 4-4-2. That was it. He messed around with the formation once in a while, but what he did is he got the best out of the players that he got, and we became a very, very attacking, flying winger-based, two centre-forward-based business. Two solid, one solid midfielder, one creative midfielder, two rapid wingers, and two expert finishers up top. And that's what won us the bulk of the matches. and you become exciting to watch by virtue of pace. That's actually how you come exciting to watching football. Okay, skill's got a lot to do with it, don't get me wrong. But pace is the real key because it's picking the ball up from deep and absolutely rapidly getting up the pitch. Most people talk about Ronaldo scoring against Fulham in the late 2000s, 2007, 2008 season, I think it was, something like that, when we were at our backs to the wall. Ronaldo picks it up, probably on our, I think it's our 18-yard box, pegs it up the left wing and pops one in, and we win the game 2-1. That's the type. That's what people consider Manchester United DNA. But it just isn't. Winning games of football is, and Ralph did clarify that. DNA is about winning games of football. And that's what he wants to do. That's what he will want to instill. I like, look, you know, ex-players, we've never played the game at the highest level. We should always have a certain amount of respect for what they say. But I'm not really sure Evra's kind of got it right on this occasion, because whenever was playing, there was a different type of mentality. Henry talks about our defensive prowess under Fergie. You're absolutely right. We always had two solid centre halves, but more importantly, we had one hell of a goalkeeper. You know, Peter Schmeichel-esque would come out and he'd punch Ferdinand out of the way. He'd punched Bruce out of the way, Pallister, Buchan before him, McQueen before him, big fella, Schmeichel, get out of me fucking way. I'm having that ball. Same with Van der Sar, would have done exactly the same, get out of me way. And I've spoken about this, about goalkeeping, about why we're conceding so many goals. And people were talking about De Gea being player of the month, etc., etc., etc. But he hasn't got that commanding presence that our centre halves need, and that's a big issue for us. So I understand what everyone was saying. I think, Vipul, if I pronounced your name correctly, mate, I get your points. I think you put your points across well. But I think every person and every fan has got their own version of what they would consider DNA to be.
Yeah, it's a very abstract concept, isn't it? But listen, we'll move on. I know we've only got 45 minutes, so we need to rattle through things. I've set a cut-off point here. You can see the timer on at the minute. We've got until the 30-minute mark to discuss this, but it's the final point on the way Rangnick wants to play, because he himself has said his idea of attacking is he wants to. Well, I'll bring the tweet up first. He wants his biggest chance to score is within 8 seconds of recovering possession. Obviously, a tweet from Eric Laurie, is a fantastic tactician on Twitter. You should go and follow him. But United did that twice against Arsenal. Obviously, the penalty in itself was its own goal. But the first two goals, I counted because I did an article on it today. The first goal was exactly 8 seconds after they won the ball back. The second was 7. So, you know, there's all these worries about how we're going to fit into Rangnick's system. How is Rangnick going to fit us? But I'll come to you first, Henry. Are these two goals, without him even taking over, and you know the pressing numbers were up and everything, is this to you like a very good sign that we could already be starting to show that we could fit Rangnick really well?
Well, I think you've got to look at the running stats for us at the start of this season. And I can't really say this politely because it's really, really frustrated me throughout the start of the season. These players need to learn to wake the fuck up in games, if I'm honest. And they need to realise that they need to run more than the opposition in games. And they weren't doing that for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And if you think that Ralf Rangnick is going to allow them to get away scot-free with doing that in games and be a Mr. Nice Guy, you're very mistaken, because he's a very, very aggressive coach when you don't do things the way he wants them to be done. So my expectation, the players have got it in them. The players have got it in them to run that amount because they've done it before, and they've done it before under Solskjaer at times. And, you know, they've probably had bollockings from other managers as well. They're top players, and yes, it might be a little bit of a shock to the system at the start, considering the drop off in the amount that we've been the distance we've been covering this season. But I think that once it's in their systems, you know, it will stay there. So I would firmly expect things like this to be happening, but not immediately, consistently throughout games. It will happen in spells. But again, it comes down to, as I mentioned before, it comes down to control. So I think that controlling when you press, the pressing triggers, they'll be put in the players' minds over the next couple of days, I would have thought, so that they know which player to press when, because I don't think they've had that direction yet. And I fully expect this to happen. I expect them to be a bit quicker on the ball, and I expect some of the lazy ones that have been slacking this season, and people know who I'm talking about, I expect them to be woken up or kicked out the side.
Yeah.
Certainly. It's being kicked out the side is a point we're going to get to on the 30-minute mark, but I just want to keep it in this sort of topic. We're going a little bit on a tangent here, Stu, but I really wanted to ask this question to someone.
All right.
So you've drawn the short straw here. But it's to do with, obviously, the worry is that he won't be able to get his ideology across in time because he's only here for 6.5 months. Does it worry you, the fact that we're bringing in a load of staff, by the sounds of it, that suit him, like assistant managers and everything? Bearing in mind he is only a stopgap, because surely once he goes, you're going to have to then replace all of those with who the next manager wants to come in.
Yeah, it's a good point, that is. And I've been thinking about this over the last couple of days, and it reminds me a lot about when Moyes took over and the issue that he had by removing all of the backroom staff that worked under Fergie. And Rangnick has already said that he wanted Carrick to stay. He wants McKenna to stay. I'm not so sure much about Phelan, but I think he wants a small group of current coaches to stay. And I totally agree with him. I think it's absolutely right. And if I was Kieran McKenna, I wouldn't want to go anywhere else right now, because I'm going to be learning from the very, very best in the business. Plus some of the coaches that he's worked with, or some of the coaches and analytics people that he's worked with in the past that maybe he can't get. And what was really, really important for me was the use of the word smart. And he said, we've got to be very smart on now who we bring in to help. And I thought that was key. We've not heard this before. We've not seen it before in the likes of Mourinho and Van Gaal. This is something he's recognised. I need to keep McKenna. We need to keep McKenna. He needs to keep a couple of other coaches in and around. I think Phelan might not stay. He may not. I don't know. It's difficult to say. But whoever he brings in has got to be able to, work alongside McKenna and help McKenna grow. This is the key part to it. Yes, I think it's the right thing to do. Coming on to just a little bit, just touching on what you guys were talking about just a few minutes ago, I think you're absolutely right. I think those 2 goals were a Rangnick style approach. You'll have to bear in mind that only really kicked on in the second half. We were all over the place again in the first half with the static McFred partnership. Fred was back into his shell again because he's got McTominay with him, who did fuck all game again. Sorry. And so it's going to come in patches, this type of pressing. It really is. And there's a couple of reasons for it. Henry's right. It's identification of the player to press at the right time, the position to be in the right time to make sure that you as a player are there to press where you need to press. More importantly, I think we've got to up our fitness levels again. And so I think Rangnick will be looking at our fitness levels. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did say, Manchester United have got to run further than any other team. We haven't done that this season. And so the types of coaches that he brings in, James, they have got to fit Rangnick. But I think Rangnick's smart enough to understand already these types of backroom staff he brings in will connect nicely with the new manager that comes in. I think he's smart enough to be able to identify that. And if we are speaking to a new manager, whoever it may be, they will have their ideas about what type of players they want, what type of coaches they need. That's where I think Rangnick will give us the professional connection that we need for forward thinking.
Just tried to unmute myself and it didn't work.
Unlike you, Jesus Christ!
Very unprofessional, isn't it? I can apologise, Stu. You deserve better.
I do.
You deserve better. But I wanted to raise the final comment. It was very briefly mentioned yesterday, but I think you guys will have a more opinionated view on it. There's been this. Sorry, that's the wrong one. there's been this view of a clean slate, this idea of a clean slate with Rangnick coming in, coaches, players, everything. Now, I'll bring up a tweet from Waz. Obviously, he was on the show yesterday. He tweeted this. It did very, very well as well. Ralph Rangnick will pick players on merit and not favouritism. The likes of McTominay and Rashford will have to fight for their places, not just handed to them, and rightly so. And I'll come to you first, Henry. We briefly mentioned McTominay yesterday, and I want to go into more detail with you. Obviously, we've seen he doesn't excel at pressing, and he doesn't excel at ball retention either in terms of controlling a game in possession. Do you think Rangnick's arrival could not spell the end of his Manchester United career, but could be very, very bad news for Scott McTominay?
Well, the pressing thing again, that comes down to management. I think personally, I know it sounds crazy, but you press the way you're directed to by your manager. And if he's been pressing in a chaotic way, that will shift, that will change really quickly. As for the other stuff, I mean, I've said my opinion on McTominay before, and I've kind of been shot down a little bit. I said it even a year ago. He is the safest player you'll see in that United squad. He doesn't play any risky passes ever in the game. He got man of the match against Chelsea, and I'm absolutely staggered as to why, because his ball retention was horrendous. Yes, he goes and kicks people. So did Joey Barton. It doesn't mean you play him in your CDM role at a top side. So he's going to have to learn pretty quickly what it means to be a top player in a side like this. Yes, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did have his favourites. I think that was quite obvious personally. McFred was obviously, I don't like saying McFred, McTominay and Fred was his preferred midfield partnership because it was, they worked well together in the bigger games, you could argue, I guess. But I think Fred got a lot of the stick last year, but I think if you took Fred out of that, and we did a few times, to be fair, and we put Pogba alongside McTominay, it exposes McTominay as not a very talented ball player. That's what I will say. And positionally, he's a little bit all over the place, a little bit kind of scattery at times, and I'm not quite sure what he's doing in his mind. I don't think the footballing brain is as good as a Van der Beek or a Matic. Yes, Matic doesn't have legs, but he's certainly got a footballing brain on him, as we saw against Chelsea with his positioning. So, McTominay it's not a massive worry. I think that, let's be clear on something. The players that are not good enough are going to get wheeled out of this team pretty quickly, I would have thought. Because Rangnick is a top coach and he will notice. If the players aren't up to it, he'll notice. And if he's got the control we think he's got, they'll be gone pretty quickly. Marcus Rashford. I said some stuff on him last season. I'm not going to say I massively regret it. Maybe I went a bit overboard at times, but I'm a bit tired of him at the moment. And I was having a conversation with my dad yesterday, and he's exactly the same. I'm a bit tired of the way that he is walking around the pitch on a regular basis. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer mentioned he needs to focus on his football last year, and he got absolutely hammered for it. But surprisingly enough, that was probably one thing that I actually agreed with him on in a press conference in a period of many, many months. Because he doesn't look in it. He doesn't look on it. He doesn't look focused. He looks like it's almost as though, and don't take this the wrong way, it's almost as though I've got a status now, so I don't have to run as much as a Fred or a McTominay or a Tellez or Delot ran a lot yesterday. I thought he was awful. And people mention positioning, but positioning comes down to, you play with the ball. When it comes down to pressing and running, that's not down to a position. You do that anyway. You do that, regardless of where you're playing. So I'm tired of him, if I'm being honest. And he will have to buck up a little bit if he's going to be in this Rangnick side, because it's a high pressing team. I think he can do it. I think there's no doubt about that. But I think he was a favourite under the previous management, and I think he knew that. And I think he thought, okay, if I'm a favourite here, very unlikely I'm going to get dropped in a big game. So what I'll do is I'll do it at 60%, and I think I can get away with it. But his performance yesterday was atrocious. It was awful, and I'm glad he got hooked as well, because I was quite frankly tired of watching him saunter around while Sancho was working his arse off to press, and Rashford was hopping, skipping, and jumping around the pitch, acting like he's the dog's bollocks. I'm tired of it. He needs to buck up and realise that there are players who will play that position better than him if he's playing it at 60%. And that's the reality of this football side. We've got a really good crop of players. So he needs to wake up now rather than waiting, because his career at the top will be very, very short if he doesn't start pressing and acting like a top professional very soon.
Yeah, he just feels like he hasn't quite come back from that injury. I'd probably agree with you there. We all know how good of a player he is. But Stu, I'll come to you and we'll focus on McTominay because it feels most poignant given that we're talking about Rangnick. Because another thing that he has said in the past is that he doesn't like sideways or backwards passes, which McTominay has built a bit of a reputation for favouring, shall we say. Now, do you feel like Rangnick's arrival could be troublesome for McTominay, or do you feel like, given the skills that he does have, and given that he's not quite in his prime yet, could he be moulded into a Rangnick-style player?
Well, I've always said, and I've said a number of times on this channel that, and you'll laugh at me now about player intelligence. I talk about it all the time, and the reason I talk about it is Waz's tweet. He's talking about McTominay, and Henry talks about McTominay being a very, very safe footballer. He is a very safe footballer, but that kind of makes you a frightened and a scared footballer at the same time. It doesn't allow you to progress as a footballer because you're too scared to take that extra step just in case you lose it and the crowd are at you. So you just play it safe. And sometimes McTominay will get the ball, and instead of making 2 or 3 yards into space where he could quite easily do that and then pop off a 2 or 3 yard pass, he'll get it and he'll ping it straight back to one of the centre halves or one of the fullbacks. Rangnick won't allow that in his side. Where you are right, James, is that Rangnick has got the potential to mould McTominay, sit him down and say, right, I need to know from you what type of player you think you are. I need to know what you think your strengths are. And then I'll tell you what your strengths and weaknesses are, because that's what you need to do with people in all walks of life, and as footballers in particular. Because you as a personality, as a player, you might think, well, I'm really good on the half turn, but actually you're not, and I'll prove why you're not. Because Rangnick's that type of guy. He won't go in, he won't steamroller people. He will explain and demonstrate. And I said, if you remember, we were talking about Tuanzebe, weren't we, last season? And I said in the summer, if I was Tuanzebe, I'd have been working on the right back position, and I think Rangnick could be looking for the types of footballer within our squad that can say, okay, and Donny van der Beek might be a really good example of this. I'm not getting in the position that I want, but I have the capabilities and the foresight in the industry within me to reinvent myself. Because Tuanzebe could have been a brilliant backup right back for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. He was, he's played there a few times and he's got the attributes. Just because you want to play in a particular position doesn't necessarily mean it's your best position. I know it sounds stupid, and we're talking about highly paid professional footballers, but it isn't always the case. Sometimes you've got to look at yourself and think, well, where can I fit into the team? How can I play myself into the team? And where am I best suited to the team? And at the minute, I hate to say it, but Tomlin is not really best suited anywhere. He's like the colour grey, unfortunately. On other occasions, it looks quite smart on certain things, but on most times it just washes out. And that's how I see it with McTominay. And I definitely think that Rangnick could do something with him, because I think McTominay's almost a little bit like Play-Doh. You can potentially mould him, pull him about a bit and mould him. I think, Henry, you're spot on with Rashford. I haven't really got a lot to say about Rashford at the minute. I think you've, without going over your ground, I think you covered it really. There's something not quite right with him. I do speak about consistency and complacency. I think if you're on that team sheet week in, week out, you get complacent. You're quite right, Henry. I could play to 60, 70%. No, you play to 100%, man. Week in, week out. When you pull on that shirt, you do it. And I think Carrick hooked Wan-Bissaka for that, for the complacency level. And there are one or two players in there. The shining light at the minute, I think, over the last 5 games has been Sancho. I think he's been the one that you've seen the most growth in certainly his play and his own confidence. But he's done that himself. It won't be the coaches that have done that. He's done that because he was playing safe, wasn't he? At the beginning of the season. Suddenly something switched on. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to start playing my natural game. So, yeah.
James, ever so quickly, Rashford doesn't have the injury excuse anymore. He's had the operation. He's had it done. He's had time off. He's been given the time off by the club because they thought he's not 100% here. He should be one of the fittest players out there, if I'm being honest, just because other players have been, they've started the season in a quite difficult manner. And they've been, playing consistently at the Euros and playing in internationals. Rashford hasn't. So he's got no excuse anymore. I'm tired of people whacking out the excuses. And then when one of the foreign players doesn't run, it's all, let's all hammer him because he's, when Fred makes a mistake, let's all hammer him. But when Rashford does it, it's okay. I'm tired of it. No excuses for any of them now.
No,
and
Rangnick right.
will see a player. He will see a player. He won't see England, English or Brazilian or French. He will see a player and he'll go, if you're not up to it, get out of my team.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think if Diallo has got an opportunity now, potentially, I think Martial's got to look at his situation. And Rangnick could be looking at that. I think the players will have a bit of a wake-up call. I know they were saying that, Carrick kind of picked the side on the last night against Arsenal. He probably did, but I think there was a lot of influence. You can, there would have been verbal communications anyway. We know that he said that. So, I don't think we'll see a huge difference on Sunday. I think that's a fair assessment, but I think we'll see a bit more determination. I think we'll see that bit more, that will to will on Sunday. And if we've got to scrape over the line like we did last night, because we could have drawn the game 3-3, absolutely. If we've got to scrape over the next 2 or 3 matches, let's just scrape the wins. If we've got to scrape wins, let's just do it. And then let's see where it takes us. But, overall, listening to him, I thought it just reminded me of a European press conference. Everything about it, the way that he was positioned, his demeanour, the way he approached the questions, the way he was clear and concise. He didn't hide behind anything. There was a bit of wit in there. It just fills you with something, doesn't it? It's hard to explain. It doesn't quite give you that fizz just yet, but I think it does. It's starting to bubble up that over the next few games, we'll certainly see a different type of Manchester United, which is great.
Yeah, well, like you said, another quote from Rangnick was that he's first going to focus on just getting games won rather than trying to implement any specific style on these players or making big changes. So that is a big important thing to him. Just scraping wins. Obviously, if they come comfortably, then that's a massive bonus. But just get the points on the board.
Wins a win. Wins a win.
There's so many hypotheticals around all the players and the system and everything. So many unanswered questions that we're not going to get answers for a long, long time. But one thing we can be sure of is it's going to be a very, very exciting 6 months, maybe even longer at this football club. And it's nice to say that once again. So on that poignant note, I will end it. Stu, Henry, massive thank you as ever for joining me. Hope you're better at 5-a-side than I am today, Stu. So good luck with that.
7 aside. I'll just be playing at the back. I'll just sweep up at the back tonight. Don't you worry.
Yeah, just a bit of a Beckenbauer role, but
I won't run much, Henry. So I'll just stroll around tonight. No, I'm looking forward to it actually, but I'm going to have to go. So
no worries.
Good to see you, Henry. Good to see you, James.
Cheers.
You too. Thanks, massive thank you as well to everyone who contributed. We had a really good number of comments. Everyone getting involved. It was really good. That's exactly what this show's all about. So be sure to, if you can, obviously, be sure to tune in next Friday as well. Makes the show so much better when we can get your comments involved. But as I said at the start of the show, if you did enjoy it, be sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment as well if you missed it and you're having to rewatch it back, get involved, and we'll reply to as many of them as we can. But yeah, until next time, we'll see you for. I'd imagine the next video will be immediate reaction after the Crystal Palace game. Another mighty win for the mighty Reds. We'll see you next time.